The Irrational Confidence Podcast. We are talking about the devastation that has happened in the sports world within the last 24 hours. Find out we lost two icons from two different sports, Dikembe Mutombo and the legendary Pete Rose, both rookies of the year in their respective sports. I'm joined by my co-host, Fresh. Fresh is sad that we have to talk about these people, but it's nice that we get to reflect and honor the career that they had.
Yeah, you kind of look at their athletes, their heroes. We kind of forget that they're people just like us. They have families, they have lives, and obviously our thoughts and prayers go out to both their families and everything they're going through right now. It's very sad to lose a loved one, and especially for the way they went. Obviously, Dikembe Mutombo having brain cancer, Pete Rose only being 83, and he looked like he had a lot of life left, and I had a conversation. I don't be it's really morbid, but when people get to like 90s or something older, you're kind of like, all right, I'm preparing myself. They're preparing, mentally that eventually that time is going to come to an end. But when people are younger, and you sort of get that shock of like, wow, they didn't look that old, or I didn't know they were dealing with that, that situation. It hits you a little more at home because you just think of the commercials, the NBA player. Pete Rose and all of his interviews, his stories. I have an autographed T-shirt from his restaurant in Boca Raton I've had since I was a little kid. And you start looking back at all the old clips and the highlights, and it just brings back tons of memories. It's a sad day, and I'm looking forward to talking about our memories of the two of these great athletes.
Yeah, let's start with Mutombo first, because I think that, especially if you aren't a hardcore basketball fan, you'd be like, oh, yeah, I remember that guy. You remember the finger wag. What you miss that he breaks into the league at the age of 25. And in this day and age with the one and dones and a lot of kids coming in at 18, 19, 20 years old, the fact that this guy plays until the age of 42 is and arguably one of the greatest defensive players of all time. I mean, how many times he won Defensive Player of the Year? And what we'll remember is the finger wag. We'll remember, the block shots, the rebounds. He was an icon. The thing that always made me laugh, though, was anytime people like put him next to Cookie Monster and they would do the comparison where Mutombo and Cookie Monster, like, there's the whole rumor that he was actually the guy that voiced Cookie Monster. And it was just so funny because there are times that he played into those things and he saw that he had a sense of humor and could play the character of himself, which made you kind of like the guy even more. Like, even if the guy completely dominated your team in the playoff. And I can go back and I can say one of the early playoff series, I want to say it was I believe it was 93, 94, 94, 95, that they were an 8 seed and they were one of the teams that upset a 1 seed in the playoffs. So Mutombo has always had a soft spot for me. And again, earlier this year, we got a chance to talk to a Hall of Famer like Dominique Wilkins, and you kind of we got an opportunity to see the human side of these people. And the same thing with Mutombo. I felt like his personality and the characteristics of himself came out in those interviews. He had that sense of humor. He was a funny guy on TV. He was a funny guy in interviews. And that's where, you see those guys and you root for them, even if they aren't on your favorite team.
I mean, he was a dominant player in the lane. He had battles with Hakeem Olajuwon, Alonzo Mourning, Shaq.
Right.
And just sort of, you would have asked him right now, they would be intimidated by him because they knew he was a force that you had to move in the lane, or he was going to dominate offensively or defensively. And it's kind of like I honestly think with the younger generation, people seeing commercials, that they probably know him more for that. And then they found out he was actually a basketball player, than they knew he was a basketball player who's in the commercials. And that's the funny part about it, kind of like leaning into the whole situation. We see the commercials where he jumps in there and swats the guy's, work materials or whatever. It's like, no. And you're kind of like, man, that guy's pretty funny. And then you realize, no, it's actually a legendary NBA basketball player.
Right.
It's that kind of personality, that kind of joy for life, that no matter what he did, he was just going to be himself and embrace it and have a great time with it and be good at it too. Um, it, his joy on the court, his ability to play, his ability to become a dominant force offensively and defensively makes him a full two-way player, which we don't see much of anymore, especially defensive players in general. And that's just it's something I hope other people can look at and say, you know what, that's the kind of player I want to be like in my game.
Yeah. And he really gave us like the idea of having this rim protector on your team, the ability to block shots like he could. And again, not only blocked the shot, but he averaged double-digit rebounds for all the way up until age 35 of his career. And the dude was just such a force on the defensive side of the court. Again, I would love to see them rename like the defensive player of the year, like the Mount Mutombo award for him, because that was one of his nicknames. I really enjoyed watching Dikembe Mutombo.
Yeah. And the thing is, we also kind of look at like, oh, they're so tall, they can't run. He moved pretty well in the court, and that just shows the athletic ability that he has.
Right. Absolutely. Well, it'd be one thing if we were just sitting here talking about Mutombo. Fresh, it was really sad that the baseball world today also lost Pete Rose, 83 years old, the all-time leader in hits. Controversial figure. Outright admits of betting on baseball and betting on his own team. But the thing I always thought was interesting by him is that he never bet on his team to lose. Where do you stand on Pete Rose? How do you, when we talk about a guy like him, where do you line up? Where does he fit within baseball? Because in my eyes, he will always be, I will argue there's Babe Ruth, Pete Rose, Jackie Robinson, and really that's like
Hank Aaron.
Yeah, those type of guys. Those are Cal Ripken are in that Mount Rushmore of baseball players.
I mean, he's definitely a top 10 overall player. Impact on the game is phenomenal. I'm a baseball junkie. I love it to death. What he did for the Reds. I mean, Charlie Hustle's his nickname for a reason. In All-Star games, he ran over a catcher. He played the game 100% aggressive. Never gave in, never gave up an at-bat, never gave up a play. Everything was 100% to the T. He never stole from the game, if you will. And that's where people like the way he played, the reason why he's all-time hits leader the Reds were the big red machine for a reason because of him and also a host of other players, but he was the core of that guy, of that group. Him and Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, etc. They were able to just go. And he was brash. He wasn't going to be the icon. I'm going to be the guy down the street, the all-American dude who's just going to be the poster boy. He was going to be himself and play ball the hard way, the right way in his mind, and never cheat the game. If you took away him in being a manager, if you took away that part, he's a Hall of Famer. He honestly should be a Hall of Famer. He should have been in many, many years ago. The fact that, unfortunately, now they're going to put him in because he's no longer alive, which is going to irritate me and love at the same time. He's going to get where he deserves, but they're going to put him in out of feeling they feel painful for him. He should have been on that stage many years ago giving that speech of his induction. The betting thing, I'm glad you mentioned it. He bet on his team to win. He was the manager. His job was to win. This is where, at the time, yeah, he broke a rule, but sports writers, get over yourselves. You guys are such a uppity, persnickety bunch, and you have been for decades, that you are protecting some sacred thing. That man bet on his team to win every single game. He was the manager. He made the lineup. He was a manager player at one point. He had full 100% faith in his team they were going to win. That's why he bet on them. That's where you got to look at this. Yes, look, we have gambling everywhere right now. That's the other thing. Gambling is everywhere. We got sponsors for this. We do our college football podcast. We have Broadwater bets. We got betting apps on our phones for 20 different types. And we're getting mad at a guy who bet on his own team, who was in charge of the lineup to make sure his team won a ball game. We got people who use steroids in the Hall of Fame, but we have someone who actually won his team to win. Not? Where's the difference? Where is the difference? Pete Rose he didn't suck up to the writers. He didn't make friends, and that's what kept him out of the Hall of Fame. They didn't do it because of what he did off the field. They didn't do it because he did in the locker room. They did it because he didn't kiss their butts. And that right there is the arrogance and the uppity,
Pompous.
pompous is a great word, of these sports writers who think that somehow they're God given and that because they can write an article and they have an English degree or they got a journalism degree that they can rule and can control everything. It's sickening. The Baseball Writers Association thinks that they have so much power they can control who's good and who's bad and who's pumped. It reminds me of, have you ever seen the movie The Natural with Robert Redford?
Mm-hmm.
And Robert Duvall is the writer who sketches out everything and makes the Babe Ruth character who's supposed to be the star, and then sees this kid on the fair, makes him the star, and then realizes him later and tries to ruin it, build up his career. They think they can control the narrative of who this person is, and they want to push the angles. And if they don't get the exposure, they don't get the insight, they don't get the one-on-one interview, they are going to crush them regardless. Not because it's the right thing to do, but because it builds them up because they were feeling left out. And that's what the sports writers have done to Pete Rose. This man, he was himself. He was raw. He was to the point. He didn't care about anybody else. He just wanted to go out there and do it his own way. Very similar to Coach Knight, to Bobby Knight. The two of them, almost identical. And they didn't care about the outside world, and the outside world shunned them because they were different. They were brash. They were aggressive. They did it their own way. They had maybe some controversial takes. But you know what? When it came down to playing the game, they coached the right way. They wanted to win, and that's all that mattered to them. I really hope Pete gets in this next class and they put him in. The sports writers do what they should have done 20, 30 years ago. We lost a legend in the game, and it's over something so silly as betting on your team to win, when winning is the only thing that matters. And we teach our kids that winning should be important. And when you want your kids to win, you support them and you want to put them out there to win, and now you're being punished because you gambled on it. It's a small ticky-tack thing we can get past. I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Really, really, really sorry. It's very sad to see Pete Rose pass away. An icon in the sports world, an icon in baseball, and definitely a Cincinnati legend.
Yeah. I think the sad part for me is, you want to prevent it, drag it out, what have you, because baseball would have had him in. He should have been in the Hall of Fame if he doesn't have the scandal early on. And it goes back to probably Judge Landis back in the 1920s season when he ruled against the Chicago Black Sox for being involved with the gamblers, and a guy even like Joe Jackson, who, if you go back and research at all about the 1912 World Series and the White Sox versus the Reds there, and a team that's known as the Black Sox for those of you, Shoeless Joe Jackson played his heart out, has the only home run of the series, and doesn't take a penny in this game, and still winds up getting banned from baseball. And I think that's kind of what baseball looked at and said, like, Pete Rose deserves the same punishment as the Black Sox back then in the 1919 World Series. I think he had a problem. I think he probably had a gambling problem, and we're talking about I think we're talking also, again, let's not put 2024 glasses on this issue here, and let's actually recognize it for what it is. We're talking about the 80s here, folks, where gambling was through a bookie and through maybe not the most, and maybe not the best people that you're doing this gambling with at the time. And, again, you made a great point there, Fresh, where you say, hey, we have all these sponsorships for whether it's DraftKings or it's, ESPN Bet or MGM or what have you, Hard Rock, or whatever app you use or have you. It becomes almost hypocritical. And I agree with you on that. I take a look at Pete Rose's career, the 4,256 hits. The thing that impressed me, though, too, is that he scored over 2,000 and he had 2,165 runs, but only had 1,300 RBIs in his career. And like, this dude got on base and then scored for his team, which made him just so much more valuable for it too. And I wonder this question, like you talk about, like, will any record ever be broken? And the thing that was most interesting is that he did this in a 20 23-year career. He played in almost every game that his team was able to be there for. Is this a record that could ever be broken to you, Fresh? Or is this like the Cal Ripken record that will – I believe that Cy Young's wins, Cal Ripken's consecutive game played, and Pete Rose hit, those are three records that will never be broken.
I agree with the Cy Young. Definitely agree with Cal Ripken. I think that's untouchable. Because right now we're in a lot of load management, and Luis Arraez right now has won the hitting title, the batting title, 3 straight years, 3 different teams, and it's about over 200 hits a year. I don't think he'll have the career to keep that going to even get close, and that's the thing where you could put up 6 200 hit seasons, but your body's getting worn down. Maybe you want to retire. You're getting paid more, so you don't have to keep playing. Where's that incentive to keep going for home run records, for hit records? And I think that's another thing where you look at guys in the past, they weren't making as much money as they are now. They kept playing. Their bodies could take more of a beating because they weren't as fine-tuned. It's funny how we say it, we're fine-tuned athletes, but you know what? The body's so fine-tuned that we get more injuries now. Guys back in the day were drinking a couple beers, having a bucket of fried chicken, but their body could take the moving and the wear and tear because they had a little more fat on it. Guys are getting so many more injuries now. The longevity of those careers, to be able to prolong, keep that hitting streak, keep that game going. Pitchers throwing faster, it's a lot more difficult. And that's why I think that you're right. The hitting streak, the hit totals will not be touched because there's just so many other variables that will be added to the game right now.
Yeah, the only guy that I think that was even ever been able to sniff Pete Rose's record would be a guy like Ichiro. If you take a look at and again, people will put at
after his Japanese stats too.
If you add in his Japanese stats with his time in the majors, yeah, he does have 43,000 hits or 4,300 hits on that. He would be the fun one to have the debate with. Again, sit around for a couple of beers or something like that and have those type of conversations. But that would be a great sports bar conversation is who could even sniff a record like Pete Rose. But it is sad that we lost him. That he's never had that opportunity to get the final piece of glory that he rightfully deserved. Again, I try to sometimes separate what people do off the field with the talents that they have on the field there. It's not like he gave himself an advantage. It's not like he gave himself any special treatment. He played the game hard. And again, the cool thing was the stories that came out about Pete Rose. And he kind of had the second act after, being dealt such a serious blow of losing his career. So I really appreciate what we were able to learn about him. We were able to learn who the human being was and what he had done for the people around him.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see there's times where we would go to the cigar bar in Vegas and there's like a sports memorabilia shop across the way. And one time we walked in and we saw him there signing autographs. I've got a feeling he definitely rebounded and actually maybe boosted some kind of fame in life because of that. I was deprived of the Hall of Fame, but I'm such the best player. People kind of fed off of that and they wanted to meet him. They wanted to hear his stories. And he kind of hoped that he made some money off of that. And it wasn't the Hall of Fame, but it got him some of that fame and some of that, recognition that he truly deserved.
Absolutely. It's a tough day, especially when you lose 2 sports legend icons in the game.
Lost Chris Christopherson a couple days ago, and then obviously Taggart from Beverly Hills Cop. It's been
Maggie Smith, Professor McGonagall.
Early in the year, obviously we lost a couple more. Apollo Creed.
Yeah.
It's been a tough year.
Yeah, it's been a tough year. Definitely been a tough year. So, folks, we appreciate you checking us out, listening to us do a retrospect of the time and lives of these 2 great players. Hit that subscribe button before you head out of here. Give us a like. Hit the notification bell. Check out SpinableSports.com because the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of SpinableSports.com. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. Fresh. That's all I got. I've enjoyed us being able to do a little quick retrospect on these 2 guys, and it's fun to talk about them, but sad that we're losing them.
Yeah. Everyone, enjoy every day. Tell everyone, all your friends and loved ones, you love them. Give people hugs. Take every day and every moment to the fullest. And with that, We'll talk again on our next episode. Bye, y'all.